Hi guys, Darrel Smith from Rapid City, South Dakota again. It was 1966 and the Vietnam War was going strong. I was flying attack missions from a quickly built Marine base, air base, about 40 miles south of Da Nang. It was called Chu Lai. We had an aluminum matting runway. The basic runway was about a mile and a half long, about 8,000 feet. And a base that contained that big a runway was a big target. And there was always a chance of us getting mortars or rockets. We were kind of fortunate in that we had a good support system in that the perimeter was guarded by South Korean Marines and U.S. Marines. I'll never forget the sound of the flares that went up all night long. There would be a kind of a muffed explosion, and then there would be a crackle, and the flare would light up, and it was on a parachute, and it would come slowly back toward the ground. It would light up the whole area. But to keep us safe, the mortars, the flares would go up off and on all night long. Well, my story today is about one night experience in that little base of Chu Lai. When we first got there, the tents, the living quarters that we lived in were they didn't have a floor. It was just sand with the army cot set up in our living quarters. That had improved. They had built platforms about 4 or 5 feet off the ground with steps up to them, and put a plywood platform there, and had a corrugated metal roof with mats for windows. We could raise and lower the mats on the side. It was pretty basic, but it was a lot better than when we started. Well, it was hot, and this particular night, and which it was a lot of times it was either hot or rainy and chilly, and when it was the moisture was in the air like that, everything was damp. Your clothes, your bedclothes, everything. But in this case, it was hot and humid, and the 6 officers that were assigned to my living quarters were doing individual things. I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but one of the guys had a state-of-the-art reel-to-reel tape recorder. We would make recordings and send the whole reels in the mail, and then get them back weeks later from home. Well, one of the guys was making a tape. Probably some of us were reading, some of us probably staring into the distance, doing nothing. But and it was hot, and we were all in our underwear. There was a kind of a muted boom in the distance. Everybody kind of looked up. One of the guys said, "Oh, that's outgoing." Boom, a little closer, and nobody said anything. And one guy said, "I think it's outgoing," and it went boom, louder, and somebody shouted, "Holy cow!" Probably a little more strong expletive there, but then all you could hear is bare feet pounding on plywood as we left our house to get into our bomb shelter. And to make it safer as possible, throughout the living area and also the working area, there were bomb shelters built, and it was just simply pits in the ground with heavily sandbagged the walls underneath it, and then on top of that was the same metal that was used for the runway, aluminum matting, and then on top of the aluminum matting was another several layers of sandbags. So we hurried out of the hooch, dived into our bomb shelter, I came to rest with shoulder to shoulder with a officer that was he was not a pilot. He worked in the office, and he didn't get shot at, and he didn't get much combat experience. And when I got right next to him, his entire body was shaking. He was just quivering all over. I was kind of foolish on my part, but I wasn't that afraid. I thought maybe it would be. I didn't think I could be hurt that way. So anyway, we hovered in the bomb shelter as the attack continued, and he marched. The guys marched. It was a mortar, and they were firing mortars into the officers' area where we lived at night. And he marched it all the way across. We all ran out of the tent, as I mentioned, except Bob. Bob said, "They'll never hit this effing house." Well, Bob had changed his mind because it was coming closer and closer to that house. And he ended up getting out. He was trying to sleep, but ended up getting out of his bunk and stretching out on the floor and covering his head with his hands. Well, the mortar round, maybe the last one in the barrage, I'm not sure, but there was a tree above our house, and it had limbs, maybe 3 inches in diameter. Well, the mortar round that came toward our house happened to hit one of these branches about 2 feet above our roof, and it exploded. The rounds are designed so that when they explode, the outer shell turns into tiny bits of metal, and they fly in every direction. Well, when the attack was over and we went back in, or the next morning we looked at it, we had well over 100 holes in our roof. Bob had stretched out on the floor, and 2 of these small pieces of metal, one in each thigh, the back of his thigh. So he wasn't in danger of being hurt or anything, but they were embedded in his legs, and he got them out. And later on, he was awarded a Purple Heart. He called it his dumb shit award. He should have been out in the bomb shelter with the rest of us. Anyway, we gathered ourselves and got back in our house, and I found out I had lost my air mattress. I had several holes in my air mattress on my bed, so it took a while to get it replaced. We got them shipped down from Japan, usually. So that's the story. That's the closest I came to getting hit by any kind of artillery or mortar shell. The next day or so, Bob was feeling better. He didn't fly for a couple of days, but he was feeling better, so he decided to make himself his own personal bomb shelter. So he spent quite a bit of time just outside of the tent, our house rather, digging a hole, and his project was to take a 55-gallon barrel and bury it right up to the top, and then get a strong cover to pull over the top of it so he could hop into the barrel and pull that heavy cover over his head for his protection. Well, it didn't work out so well. He worked and worked and worked, and it was a hot day. And finally he decided, he got the barrel in the hole, and he decided he would do a dry run and see how it would work. Well, Bob was well over 6 feet tall, and the barrel wasn't big enough. When he crouched as low as he could in the barrel, his whole upper body was sticking out the top, so it wasn't a very good bomb shelter. So that's my story for today. Goodbye.